Welcome to The Homeless Conservative. My name is Blake Fisher. Thank you for joining me. Today I'm going to be joined by my friend Doug. He's an immigrant from South Africa. He's been a citizen now in the U.S. for a few years, but thought it'd be interesting to get an outsider's perspective on some things going on in the U.S. He was a little nervous about coming on a political podcast. He likes to think of himself as a little bit more, give me the facts and I'll make a decision. Doesn't like to be pigeonholed into either party, and I don't blame him. I totally get it. But we talk about everything from Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter. We talk about the aging population of Congress. We talk about just sort of his outside view of the United States and what's good and what's bad about it. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks for joining. Here's my conversation with Doug. Thanks for being here, Doug.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
I must say that I'm neither a conservative nor homeless.
That's okay. It's not. There is a misconception with a few people who think I'm actually maybe homeless. I'm not homeless. It's more of a metaphor for how I feel politically.
Okay, got you. Yeah,
but
I'm not like right or left or anything. I go by no label.
But that's a good thing because like that's one of the first questions I normally ask guests, especially when they're just like friends, is like, okay, so if you had to define yourself politically, first of all, you're obviously not born here. If you can't tell by the accent.
That's actually a great point.
Yeah,
because I've had a bit of a disrupted youth. I'm obviously not youthful anymore.
Right, neither one of us are.
I've had a disrupted life. And I've lived in 4 different continents.
Yeah,
and in each place I've lived, I'm just grateful to be there, and thankful that I'm in a cool place, and infinitely respectful of the local people. So I try not to go either here or there, with any strong opinions when it's not my place of origin. But then again, my place of origin was my mom was one nationality, my dad was another. So I grew up confused.
Yeah.
And when I was older, I went to my dad's native country,
which was
Scotland.
Okay, Scotland. Okay.
And I told everyone I'm Scottish, and they're like, "No, you're not."
No, you're not.
So I was like, "Okay, forget it." I don't go by any labels.
South African and Scottish accents not confused with each other very often, probably. So yeah, you probably stuck out.
Yeah, I stuck out like a sore thumb. Yeah.
Okay, so what are the four continents?
So I lived here in the U.S.
Okay.
Africa.
Right.
Europe.
Yep.
And then the Middle East.
Okay.
As well. Yeah.
So you've seen a bit of the world.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun.
I love it here. I love it in the States.
So are you a United States citizen?
I am. Yeah.
You are.
So I work for contractors for the DoD, and I try to push it out as long as I could.
Right. But they were like, you got to do it.
No, at some point this guy insisted that I became a citizen.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can do this. And actually what really was the catalyst was my kids were getting born.
Yeah.
Not at the same time, obviously.
Right.
That was like, us American, kids are American. This is it. I'm here now. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, so we did it, yeah.
So, okay, how long have you been a citizen now?
I think it's 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years. Okay.
Yeah, I've been here longer than that, but
you got here just in time for the craziness, right?
Yeah, well,
politically at least, it feels like a weird time to become a citizen.
I honestly feel like wherever I go, it gets messed up.
So you think it's you?
No, that's kind of. I mean, I do have some issues, but
that's okay. But you don't think
that might be mildly? No, I don't firmly believe that. But it's just we're on this trajectory.
I think you're right. Yeah,
and it's not great.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was ever great.
Well, I mean, I think things have gotten. I would say in the course of the 21st century, things have kind of accelerated pretty quickly. I feel like between 9/11,
right,
and then the wars thereafter,
right.
Afghanistan, and I really don't know anyone that didn't think we should be in Afghanistan, but obviously Iraq was a pretty divisive thing,
right,
in the United States.
Yeah.
And then 2008 financial crisis, which I think kind of gives way to like Tea Party stuff in the 2010, 2012 kind of area, and then kind of gives way to Donald Trump in 2016, and then obviously you can map it out after that however you like. But
yeah, that's really interesting that you brought that up, because I in the for me as an observer of the U.S. and now a citizen, I watched American people give up their privacy rights at 9/11.
Yeah.
Then in 2008, I saw them give up significant financial rights. And then now in the post-COVID environment we're living in, it looks like a lot of people gave up some medical rights.
Yeah.
And that's been those are quite significant because it's always been considered a free country.
Yeah.
And then you're realizing people aren't as free as they could be,
Yeah, I mean, not when you don't. It's I never like anything in the name of an emergency because I feel like we never make great decisions in an emergency. Right. And by we, I mean people. Even like I don't think I as a human being, it's not a good time for me to make a life decision in the middle of a crisis if I don't have to.
No, you should be on the beach.
You should wait a second, take a breath,
sitting on your
analyze.
Dock, sitting on your dock, smoking a cigar, drinking some meditating.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least give it
mulling it over
a couple days, weeks, months, whatever the appropriate amount of time is for a decision. And I do think that we get in trouble as a country when we go, well, this bad thing happened. We better do something right now.
Right.
And that's how you get the Patriot Act. I think that's how you maybe rush into. I mean, I think that most people would agree that Iraq was a mistake. But at the time, I think we had bad information. I think that's the thing that people forget about Iraq is that everyone thought Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction.
Well,
and so
I'm sure he wasn't a nice guy.
No, he was definitely not a nice guy.
I mean, either way.
I still think Iraqis are better off without him in charge. But my point is like...
I don't know. I never visited before or after.
Yeah, me neither. But I mean... He was obviously a pretty bad dictator. I don't think that anyone had the warm fuzzies for him. But I mean, my point is that like some of those things end up happening because it's like, oh, bad thing happened. We got to do something about it. And I feel like that's happened with all those things you just talked about. So financial crisis happens. We're like, we got to fix this right now. And really sometimes the better thing to do is to not do something.
Right.
And instead we end up with these like permanent things like we've been dealing with the Patriot Act stuff since then for 20 years now. And
well, even when you get a mortgage now, it's tedious because of what happened in 2008.
Right.
Where it never used to be like that.
We swung probably too far the other way.
Yeah.
Because, I remember I was trying to get a mortgage in 2009 for the exact same amount of money that my previous, like, it's not like I had, I was putting more down on it. So, like, the mortgage was for the same amount. And it was like this, like, process that took forever.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out why. I'm like, I've got, I guess and it happened again in 2013. Like, getting a mortgage in even 2013 was really hard for me, even though it's like, I had had the same job for a while.
Yeah.
I had like, and at one point, it took so long. At one point they were like, there's a problem. Your income doesn't match your, checks you're getting or whatever. And I was like, in what direction? They're like, well, your checks are for more now. I was like, I've gotten a raise since you started this process. Why is that a problem that I'm making more money than I said on the form I filled out? I've gotten a raise since then. But sometimes I think we swing too far or we make a rash decision and then we got to live with it because rarely do we undo things.
Right.
At least in this country, rarely do we like repeal a law.
Well, I think
I
think it's everywhere. You know, people beat themselves up here, but I've seen worse.
You're probably right. Yeah. Obviously, this is the only experience I have because I've not lived on 4 continents. Yeah. And so
I didn't own property on the different continents. So just in one other continent, I had a house.
But it is interesting that you mentioned that, like, as an outsider, you can see those things maybe a little bit with a different lens.
I think a lot of immigrants across the board, the guy who came through the river, and then other guy who formerly immigrated, we're all immigrants, and have a similar experience and similar expectations. People came here for a reason, and
every immigrant did,
right,
for one reason or another. They can be different reasons, but no one like landed here aimlessly.
And the immigrants are, well, the ones I've met are mostly thankful that that they're here now. So we have a more, well, at least I do, a more posture of gratitude more than entitlement.
I've not met an immigrant that is not does not view America differently than a lot of the people that live here, in the sense that most of them either, normally it's that they wanted to come here, obviously,
right.
I mean, one way or another, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
whether it's because you're fleeing gang violence in Venezuela, or
you just
want to be here,
or you just wanted a better life. I mean, I've been in El Salvador, and the people was demoralizing. People didn't have something to look forward to.
Right.
So I guess for them it was come here. Now, without being offensive, I was living in the UK, and my buddy entered the green card lottery and won.
Okay.
And he came to us and said, "Hey, I got a green card." And at the time I was like, "Why do you want to go live there?
Yeah.
You got 2 weeks vacation, you're working excessive amounts of time."
Yeah.
And that kind of ended the conversation.
Yeah.
And then here I am years later, I moved here.
And then
I'm
moved
grateful,
here.
yeah. So it was just kind of, it kind of had this reputation of working very hard.
Well, I think there is some of that, but I think that there's depending on your job, obviously, you can choose to do that or not.
Right.
I mean, like, there are certain jobs that, they're going to require, I think there's probably more workaholics per capita in America than any other country. I would just guess. I mean, in the sense that this is just, keep in mind, I've not lived in the other countries. I'm just judging by looking at how a lot of Europe takes like the whole month of August off and stuff. And I think that's great, actually. I wish we did a little bit more of that.
Well,
here.
they're very productive. The people I've worked with were incredibly productive around the world. So here they're productive too, but they waste a lot of time. But that was one thing that dissuaded us from coming to, to the US from Europe.
Yeah. But you've liked it?
I loved it. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I really have had some cool experiences. Really met nice people across the board.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it. Glad you don't think we're all hot-headed idiots.
No,
like the rest of the world sometimes. I feel like we get that reputation, to be fair. I mean,
I think
because we are sometimes.
I think if I could dispense any advice, would be for people to really explore something.
Yeah.
So something flashes across the screen, look into it.
Yeah.
And possibly research it.
I don't think that's going to happen.
No, it doesn't happen for some reason. It doesn't happen. I mean, we've got computers, we've got the internet.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to do on this show.
You're doing a great job.
Trying to talk about the things that I feel like my biggest problem with a lot of the politics and media and really pick it. I mean, what's funny is that we somehow politicize everything, even like COVID. Like, how did COVID, a virus, end up being a left versus right thing? I don't really know.
Well, I think some people say it was made and some people it wasn't. And
but
so that created a whole Pandora's box.
I think that what the problem was is that people sorted into what their side.
Right.
So So, I mean, in my opinion, what really happened is that COVID hits. Anything Trump said, there were people that were going to go along with that.
Right.
Because there's this Trump derangement syndrome on both sides. There is a pro-Trump derangement syndrome where everything he says you agree with, even if 5 minutes before it he'd said something else and you agreed with that. That was the opposite. And then there's this other group of people that anything he said, even if it was the right or wise or smart thing, have to go against it. And I think that certainly he could have done a better job at not being that divisive, but the point is he just was. And so somehow we took this virus that should have been something that was like, hey, we should be able to look at science and data and be able to figure out how to best mitigate the problems here. And yet we just sorted into our own little groups and, everything became a culture war thing. It was like, lockdowns or anti-lockdowns, masks or anti-mask, vaccine or anti-vaccine, origin of it even. Like, where did this come from to try to prevent it in the future? And I just thought, I was kind of shocked because I really thought it could be, I thought COVID could be a thing that actually went I'm not saying could have been like 9/11 level thing, but I mean, it felt like it could be a thing where we kind of go like, hey, we can all do this and figure out how to get past this and how to create a vaccine or how to protect the old vulnerable people in the population. But we just didn't do any of that stuff. I think it was the most mishandled, which is always my point when people are like, I want the federal government to have more control. And I'm like, do you see how they did COVID? It didn't work very well.
Yeah. No, that's where we live. I'm thankful that we didn't get messed around with.
Yeah.
But backtracking a bit to Trump.
Yeah.
What concerns me is a lot of people haven't traveled throughout the U.S. much. And people have way different demeanors. Like anyone from New York is, well, not everyone, but mostly people are very direct, and
Yes.
they almost come across as rude. Like, if you travel to the Middle East or Israel,
Yeah.
you think everyone's rude, but that's just their demeanor. They're lovely
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, it's really
I'm
just
taken aback. People think I'm rude, and I'm just very direct, And I wonder how many people actually even knew that Trump could be from New York, and he had the. I mean, I'm not agreeing. I didn't watch a lot of Trump.
No, but his personality is very New York.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very much New York real estate developer, which is what he is. Now,
Well, think about someone pushing on the subway.
yeah.
It'd be like, I've been to the airport.
Yeah.
Haven't been to New York, but I know some people from there. They're quite direct. I like them.
I like New York. I it had the reputation when I was a kid of people being rude. Like, that's kind of like the stereotype on even TV and stuff like that. And I spent a lot of time in New York when I was like 19 and 20, and I just found that people were direct. It was like their time was valuable because they're miserable working their butts off to be able to live in New York because it costs a fortune.
Yeah.
And so, they're just like not gonna, if they need water at dinner and you're the waiter and have not brought them water, they're gonna flag you down and be like, I need some water. Like, and they're not rude about it. They're just like, matter of fact, like, your job is to get me water,
right?
And I will still tip you, but give me water. Yeah.
So that may be one of the things about. I don't know much about Trump, to be honest. And then I did. Yeah. COVID was kind of weird.
It was very weird.
But I personally did very well out of it. I had some great family time. I had a newborn kid.
Yeah. Me too.
I redirected my career somewhat.
Yeah.
And I did some things that worked out well financially. So
yeah,
I'm very thankful for the time to have some downtime. We talk about only having 2 weeks vacation. The nation had how many months?
We had a lot. A lot of people bought vacation houses, started working remotely.
Yeah,
I had a boss that worked out of an RV for like 3 or 4 months straight. I mean, with his family. I mean it. But
that sounds fun. Yeah,
I think the problem, and this is the original thing that we talking about on this was how Congress is kind of a mess, and I think that COVID was a perfect example of how much just performative nonsense is what I like to call it goes on in Congress, because they were like, here was the time where they needed to step up and do their jobs, and they still couldn't manage to put the partisan crap behind them and just like do the things that we needed to do as a country, other than just pass giant spending bills. That's all they did, is essentially like, let's just throw money at the problem, which is not necessarily how you solve problems. Yeah. Money does not make every problem go away. And now we know there was a ton of waste and a ton of fraud. Yeah. And there's still all this money just sitting around and causing inflation and stuff.
I want some of it.
Yeah, well,
if I could,
yeah. I mean, I think that there's something like $800 billion in fraud or something that they think.
Oh, fraud! I don't want any of that.
Yeah,
I want some.
You want some of
I want some legit money. I want to bail out again.
It makes me. Yeah. I meant to look it up. I got busy before we started recording, but we were talking the other day about. So I had, what we were talking about specifically that started this whole thing was I had posted like the reel or the short about Joe Biden and how he's not making any sense.
No, he's not.
And he's not. He seems a little too old for it. And then Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, has had 2 freeze ups.
And then I
can't talk.
texted you. Someone said, what was that text say?
Oh, I forget. But I mean, either way,
she said it was like is it a care home? Is that what?
Oh, yeah.
So who was that?
So Nikki Haley.
Okay, yeah.
Who's running for president?
I actually don't know who she is.
So she's running for president on the Republican side, and she said Senate is basically like a really fancy nursing home now, and you look at the ages of some of these people.
Well, we should take it for what it is, because I find some of the politics very amusing. I think that's one of the statements where
that was.
I wonder if everyone laughed when they heard that.
I think probably, but it is.
I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be Hillary Clinton, or you could be George Bush's daughter. It's still funny.
But it's a little concerning at this point, like so the leader of the Republican, essentially. Other than Trump, the leader of the Republican Party, the only one that actually gets stuff done, Mitch McConnell, is like blanking out at press conferences for 30 seconds at a time. That seems like a problem. Joe Biden is very managed. He seems to basically do stuff from noon to 4, and that's the only time he does any kind of public stuff. and he's stringing together weird sentences, and he's
Yeah.
either lying or very confused about the details. He says things like his son died in Iraq. His son did not die in Iraq. His son died of cancer. So it's like,
he says some. I mean, if you watch some of the clips, he's saying some very weird
yes,
things.
yeah. And then on top of that, we've got a bunch of old people that I think, and Dianne Feinstein's another one from California who's like literally
goodness, yeah,
feels like, I mean, no, she doesn't know what's going on, and it feels like, okay, so we've got
well, Nancy Pelosi knows how to do inside trading well.
Yeah, but at least Nancy.
Well, I mean, she's, or at least her husband. I mean,
Nancy Pelosi's old, but she doesn't like. She seems like she's all there. So
unfortunately, yeah.
Sorry. So some people are now talking about, like, I feel like the comment I get the most on that was we should have an age limit for stuff. I mean, what do you think there should be age limits, or do you think cognitive tests or something?
I think we should use common sense.
I do too.
Yeah, I mean, if someone's 80 and they sharp as the tack, well,
fine.
Go for it.
Yeah,
but I mean, if you got someone who's I mean, I don't know any of these people. I mean, Joe Biden, I deliberately stay away from politics.
I'm just seeing a little
bit of irony that I'm sitting here discussing it.
But you even see this stuff, right? I mean, this stuff bubbles up. It's
no, it just hits you in the face, so you can't avoid it. But
yeah,
like Joe Biden, I'm sure he was a nice guy back in there. He really he should be possibly doing the AARP. Possibly not running.
I think he's beyond that. I mean, I think
it could be. I don't want to be rude, but
I think it needs to be done.
He I don't know why he doesn't hang it up. You know.
And Trump, for that matter, is old too. I mean, he's 78. Biden's 80. These are not. I need to look up what the average age of the senators are, but it's got to be in the 70s.
You can tell by the decor in the buildings. It's not great, you know.
Well, to be fair, that's probably not their fault. But
okay. Yeah. I went to Washington D.C. last year.
Yeah,
and it was cool.
Yeah,
never been there before, but
it's cool. Yeah, I like it.
But a couple of things happened. Is like I met someone who was saying that D.C. is run by 20-year-olds, so all these people running around and these political people, and then there's obviously a decent amount of ancient people there.
Yeah, but probably nothing in between the two of them.
No, but there was this horrific arrogance. The one guy was saying, "This is the center of the world. Never before have we had such a powerful city." And I'm like, man, that's what people thought in ancient Rome times.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I wish people, doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Libertarian, right-wing, homeless, conservative, whatever you are, just approach things with a little bit of humility, you know, and just be, this is a great country. It's powerful. But we have to be mindful and grateful for what we've got here. And then another topic is people have paid a significant price for what we have today. I mean, we do a little bit of DoD work, and I meet brave people every single time I'm out on the base.
Yeah.
And these are people that God might be pushing a pen on a desk.
Right, but still.
But someone could tell them to go off to Afghanistan or anywhere. I mean, that's the nature of being in the military.
Do you get a sense? Do you get the sense? Like, I feel like it's really ramped up, especially over the last 10 years. That like, at least my perception is that there's a lot of people, or at least the loudest people, are claiming that the country's not great. So from the left, from the left, it's like, oh, we're terrible people, and you know, everyone's racist, and there's that from the left.
I don't know how people can come up to these sweeping generalizations.
Yeah.
You know, it's
the right's
crazy.
doing the same thing. They're just doing it in a different way. They're saying, oh, we're terrible because of X, Y, and Z or whatever.
People are yelling at each other in this postmodern tribalism that we're experiencing, and whereas we don't have to agree.
Right.
We have to be respectful.
Yep.
And I don't have to conform to what you want. But I have to be considerate of your preferences.
Yeah.
But that seems to be lost.
Oh, I think that's definitely lost. I mean, I think that part of that, though, is that I think this is happening all over the world.
Yeah,
too.
everywhere.
So
this isn't a U.S. problem. This is called polarization. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, the polarization, the populism, and the kind of like...
Yeah, populism.
Sort of demagogue leaders that are just saying exactly what people want to hear, which isn't leadership, really. I mean, that trend is happening everywhere, and but it does seem weird that it's. I just don't know what it is about this point in human history that has made everyone want to do that. But
it's almost like some people have disengaged their brains. You hear something,
yeah,
go and research it. Never before have you had access to so much information.
Yeah.
Go out there and look at it. You're going to get some weird ideas. You're going to get some mild ideas. You're going to get some medium ideas.
I think the hard part, though, for that...
You're going to get it all and then use your cognitive abilities to figure it out.
I think the hard part of that is there are so many dishonest people saying things that aren't true about the... So, like, if you, like, even to try to research something and get the facts or even just good opinions about stuff, like, why is this, like... I mean, to me, there is no policy that doesn't have trade-offs.
Right.
And there's no policy that doesn't have some sort of downside somewhere. You know what I mean? Well, but, like, you will not find... You'll either find media saying this is all great or this is all bad. And it's hard to find the people... And I think that's what most people miss, because even I'm like a political junkie, so I'm the opposite of you.
Right, yeah.
And that I like to read this stuff.
What's the opposite of interested in politics?
Well, I mean, I would say you're more interested than some people. I mean, the fact that
I'm incredibly inquisitive about life.
Yeah.
So how it affects me is where I get involved.
Yeah.
I mean, some folk may call that selfish.
Well, no, but I mean, I think that's what we're all kind of a little bit supposed to do, is that you're supposed to be... I mean, I don't want to say we should be voting our own self-interest all the time, because that's how you get just free handouts or whatever at someone else's expense. And I don't really like the class warfare stuff of like pitting, I don't like that the left tends to vilify people that have made money in any way. I know. Any honest way.
I've got a friend who's like that. His wife's quite wealthy.
Yeah.
He hates rich people. But he benefits from it. They've got lake houses and things he goes to stay at. I'm like, if you're really so opinionated about rich people...
But he doesn't understand that he's one of them?
Don't live a rich lifestyle. Live like everyone else. I've never met a poor person who didn't want a little bit more.
Right.
But this guy...
Or a rich person.
This guy, yeah, definitely.
Everyone wants a little bit more,
And bless them, like, never get enough, But this guy's attacking... And I consider myself well-to-do.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not rich. I'm definitely not poor.
Yeah, same.
I'm comfortable.
Yeah, me too.
And but I get attacked by this guy, and it's crazy. People, but let's go back to something else, like Elon Musk. I know we threatened to talk about him earlier.
That's fine. I like that would be fun to talk to Elon, especially
he's suing someone now.
For what? I mean, he probably always suing someone?
And I don't want to mess this up, but it's called the Anti-Defamation.
Oh,
ALD, right?
ALDS or
what is that?
Well, Anti-Defamation League is a
that's what it is.
Is like a Jewish or pro-Jewish anti-Semitic.
I didn't know what it was.
Crimes.
Yeah, that's what something like that.
Yeah,
I didn't know. I saw the tweet. I'm like, what is this? So I jump onto the computer and look it up, and now I'll know a little bit more about what this is.
Right.
And I don't know why people don't do that in life. Because, I mean, most people don't take the time to realize, what is he saying? What is he doing?
Right.
And, I mean, back to this tribalism, if I was a total Elon Musk fan person, I would think everything he says is terrific. But meantime, he said something about everyone going back to work being a moral issue. And I struggle to take moral advice from a guy who got together with his best friend's wife or something. So it's where do we go with these things?
Right.
I mean, just take a little time.
And you can
find this information and then form your own opinion.
You can also disagree with someone 80% of the time and not 20% of the time. I think most people now think that you have to be pro-Elon or anti-Elon, pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Biden, anti-Biden.
Like, I'm anti his going back to work ideas.
Yeah.
But I think like that's his cars.
Yeah.
I like the idea that seems like some organization was trying to limit his new Twitter purchase.
Right.
And he's taking action against the people. It turns out those people have a very interesting background where they attack left-wing causes too. Which that in itself is interesting.
Yeah, I think
So, I mean, it's just, doesn't matter what the topic is. If something catches your attention, go and do the research.
yeah, but the internet was supposed to make that easier and better, but it's almost like, and this is funny that it's talking about Elon, because I think Twitter is actually, Twitter has been the problem partially because what happened is what to me what's really weird about Twitter, and this is like, I loved Twitter for a while. Like I really did. I liked live events on Twitter. I liked politics on Twitter because I got direct access to, once I found writers or people whose opinions I found trustworthy in the sense that they were going to tell it to me straight. I knew they weren't going to lie to me. I knew they were going to tell me the good and the bad or whatever, just like good journalism, which is what it used to all be about. Was, I think people forget that journalism used to be about always trying to hold people accountable that were in power. So it didn't matter who's the president. We're going to hold them accountable to the people that voted for them. But now it's turned into well, if you're the New York Times, you tend to, until it's absolutely necessary, you're not going to talk crap on a Democrat. And if you're Fox News, you're going to do the opposite. And so I think that Twitter became this direct path to get to those writers, which was cool because it was like, oh, I can see this person's thoughts in real time. And even have conversations with people that I would never be able to have a conversation with any other way.
Well, I think it's a little more difficult now because with the blue check, you have to... you can't DM someone unless you've got a blue check. And so I think that... But what happened, this is my theory of really where Twitter started going bad pre-Elon, was that was a good thing, but it went to those people's heads that were those people on Twitter, and they thought... And it also became, if the internet accelerated people feeling they needed to be first to break news, Twitter was like pouring jet fuel on it. And what you ended up was with a lot of really bad information on Twitter. Like I would say that especially in the moment of like a crisis of some sort. I remember during specifically the Boston Marathon bombing. There was so much, some of it was good, and then there was so much bad information on Twitter from reliable sources that just weren't taking the time to even vet stuff. Like we put a guy's driver's license and picture on like national news and Twitter and said that it was the guy that bombed the thing, and it was not. It was it was a mix up of IDs. That guy's like, probably not popular.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, you're probably getting sued at that point. You know what I mean?
Some of these people get murdered. They think, well, I'm going to take you out.
You know? And you get sued by, you're going to get sued for libel if you put my picture on CNN and say that I bombed a marathon and I wasn't the guy that did it. Like, I'm going to sue you for that.
It's not great. I mean, if that happens to you.
So I think Twitter accelerated it. And then, when Elon bought it, my opinion at the time was, I was like, I'm kind of I think things need to be shooken up sometimes. Like, I think that it needed maybe a shakeup because it had kind of gotten pretty polarizing politically and stuff. I mean, I think Twitter and all the social medias were like, I think Donald Trump and Republicans have some legitimate gripes with them in the sense that they were suppressing legitimate news stories because it wasn't convenient for their side. And that if you think it's not bias at anywhere in Silicon Valley, if you don't think there's a left-leaning bent, I think that you're kind of foolish. But I don't think Elon was as good, my opinion so far, and feel free to argue with me here. I don't think running a software company was as easy as he thought it would be because he'd done so much hardware before.
No, but not Twitter, because Twitter, so people know Jack Dorsey, right?
Right.
And he's the founder.
Right.
But he's actually not. He was working for another company called, I mean, you should like this, called Odeon, which is a podcasting company. It was owned by Evan Williams.
Right.
And they fired Jack Dorsey, and he went around telling everyone, and he still, I don't know how it got to the position where he had a seat on the chair, on the board.
Yeah.
But he went around telling everyone he was the founder.
Yeah.
So even the origins of Twitter are murky.
Yeah.
And anyone can go look this up.
It doesn't really matter.
Well, it's got a culture in the place where it was a confusing place.
Well, I think
and they've got, I'm sure every company's like this.
Yeah.
To some extent. But it just shows you like this. I mean, you can't just hold on to Twitter as your main news source. But
yeah, but what's weird is that so many people do now. I mean,
Well,
you
that's
look
crazy.
at you look at the.
I mean, you can watch Al Jazeera News,
Right.
and get a very good perspective. You can watch whatever channel you like and get their perspective, and then come home, get on the internet for a little bit. Not it can be a rabbit hole, but spend a bit of time and research.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone's actually looking at two different sources like that. I think
I read multiple.
Well, I mean, I think it's a very low percentage of people.
Well, I wish there was more people.
I know. I think there need to be, but I wonder how you. I think that it's kind of a weird thing because I think someone has to take that step first. I think it's the news organizations and people on Twitter that need to go. I need to be more reliable.
Yeah.
Because for me, the problem is that like the reason I'm not on Twitter anymore is because it just became a dumpster fire. All it became was people sorting into their own little things. Yeah. And for the most part, people just on the internet they say things that they wouldn't say to people in real life. I mean, I think it's the biggest problem.
And we've talked about that. I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but the premise being only stupid people are mean.
Right. I don't agree with that necessarily.
Yeah,
you talk about on your podcast.
It didn't sound like everyone did, but
I do think that.
I mean, it's,
because I know
lots true for me, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that it's weird because I feel like when people are lied to, because I think that's what happens in most of these situations. Like, if you're lied to and told, let's say, for example, well, I mean, here's a good example that I think is worth because it's just in the news and stuff like that. The January 6th stuff, the riot at the Capitol, whatever we want to call it.
That does seem a little crazy.
That's a good example, though, of I think a bunch of people that believed the people that were telling them lies about what happened, and you know, if an election really was stolen, I would be upset about it.
Well, I know two people that were there. I don't know the person. I know the one girl's husband.
Yeah,
and I, through the context of work, met a guy who I didn't get on that well with, but he was actually, for one of a better word, penetrated the Capitol building.
Yeah.
And the girl is actually a very rational girl.
Did he get arrested or anything?
You know, that's funny you should say it, because I never heard from him or saw of him. I knew I was at lunch and he was telling us that he went there.
Yeah. And
he was showing us like Facebook videos. And then I didn't hear from him for months. And I was wondering, is he incarcerated or what's become of it? So, but apparently he's not. So
okay, well,
I don't know how that's up to you to form an opinion about. It's
such a good example, though, to me, of people believed the lies that were told to them via the president, via other people in Republican leadership, via Twitter, via news sources that they trusted, and believed it, and I think acted. I'm not going to call it rationally, because I think if you were rational, you would check out the facts and see that they didn't add up to anything. Yeah, but you know, I would be upset if an election was, you know, provably stolen, but this one wasn't in 2020. So
I don't know, but I know that the other response to the January 6th incident was this other girl. So she's a mom. Yeah. She got in the rabbit hole of her kid having to wear a mask at school. Yeah. That took it on a political path. Yeah. And she actually went to the Capitol on this January 6th and was walking by, and she's a very intelligent person, photographer. I don't know her very well. I think I met her. I was friends with the cousin of her husband. Okay. So it's a really random connection. Yeah. And she was walking down the street, and people said someone was riling up the crowd, and someone told her that's Antifa riling up these people.
Yeah, I don't.
So there was all sorts of there's all sorts of things going on that we don't know.
Yeah, but we do know because we've investigated. We've charged a bunch of people so far.
I don't know.
No member of Antifa has been charged.
I personally don't know anything about. That's what she said. And she was there.
I know, but I mean that's my point. Is
people,
that Twitter?
I didn't even know what was going on. People from overseas were phoning me, and they were saying, "What's going on?" I go, "Yeah, nothing. Whatever day it was, I'm just carrying on with my day." And they're like,
"No, something's
this is crazy."
Yeah,
and I'm like, "Who cares? You know, this is affecting you. You know, it's like."
But I mean, my point is that
it was a bit embarrassing. I'll be honest. It's
very embarrassing.
I mean, to have.
I think.
There's still I think it comes down to a total lack and disregard for law and order. which is something I feel very passionate about.
Right, but it's hilarious that those are the people that would claim that they're
agreed.
for law and order, but they were like literally beating police officers with thin blue line flags.
I think when a police officer stops you, you should be, yes sir, here's my driver's license, insurance.
So, to me, it's just
like, I mean, this is this attitude of disrespect. That's a government building. You can't just walk into a government building.
Well, you especially can't break the window to get into it.
What were they thinking?
Or push back the barricades.
It's crazy.
I think that it's the same thing with all riots. You know, it's like one person starts doing it and then two people, and it just becomes easier and easier to be the 50th person that starts throwing bricks at windows.
I mean, my friend was telling me about Michael Jordan punching someone in the face, and I said, at the time, I'm out. If someone punches me in the face, I'm going home.
Right.
Same with, I'm going to, first of all, I wouldn't be at a political thing. I don't have enough time to do what I need to
exactly.
do. So long, if I'm going to travel somewhere, it's going to be to Hawaii, and I'm going to surf a wave. I'm not going to go
But if I find myself in a riot situation, I'm trying to get out of there.
I can assure you I'm never going to...
I'm not breaking into a building. I'm not setting a car on fire.
Yeah. I'm going to be out of there because you just don't know. It's not a good idea.
But I mean, you look at it, and we had... I don't think most of the country, unfortunately, as someone that's been here my whole life, I don't think people are doing what you're saying. You're right, I think really simple. I think it's really simple to go, here's a piece of information that's been presented to me. How can I verify if it's true or not? And which is what, I also don't think we're teaching people how to do that very well. Because I think the internet has changed it enough that you do have to do that now. You have to verify.
I'm glad you said teaching because I think a lot of the problems started in school.
I think you're right.
I'm right now where my kids go to school. There's some violent kids, and I'm actually loosely friends with one of the fathers of the most violent.
It's going to happen, yeah.
And the school does nothing.
Yeah.
So what does that communicate to our generation?
That it's okay to do
it's
that.
Absolutely. Yeah. The problems start way younger, and then the other hobby horses. Do you know much about debate? Like, have we talked about this before?
Like debating? I mean, you mentioned it briefly. Yeah, I mean, like,
debate. So they get kids to argue for Steve Jobs, and then they say, "Okay, argue against him."
Yeah,
and then I was, due to the violence in my kids' school, I was looking at another school.
Yeah.
And they were talking about their successful debate team.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you're talking to the wrong guy about that. But they said someone's going to be the future president because they're so good at debate. And I'm like, you're getting a young person to argue one opinion, then turn around, pivot, and come with another opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, you bring up people just to switch. And pivot with no real conviction.
But I don't mind telling people that like it's good to try to think of something through a different lens, because I think that we've gotten so siloed into the way. I mean, we're sorted now by Pickett, and it's a sorting mechanism.
But you're talking about. I don't want to confuse critical thinking with debate. Because everyone should critical think, but in the moment.
But I think there's a bit of that in debate. I mean, as far as like
is there? I've never seen a debate. I'd be like, this is boring, and I'd leave.
I love arguing with people, so I would be funny, into it. But I probably wouldn't love to argue something that I didn't really feel was true. But I think I could do it.
Right? Yeah, that would be fun. I mean, I think there's some comedy. I mean, I love comedy, so I think there could be some good value in seeing some people. I rip into each other a little bit would be funny.
Here's the value in it that I would see in it. I agree that it's not really how the real world works. Like, we're not ever sitting down and going, you're taking this side and you're taking this side, because I think that strips out the nuance that exists in every issue. Because here's the thing: if you're going to debate something, let's say like the last debate I went to was about the privacy stuff you mentioned.
I don't know what it was.
This was just like
Republican.
This was just like a friend of mine was doing it. It was basically like it was during the kind of the height of sort of the Edward Snowden stuff and all the NSA and wiretapping and all this kind of stuff. And it was should we be okay with this? Should we not be okay with this? Like, is this, so it's like one guy from ACLU saying no, and another guy saying like, it's just this metadata. Yeah,
that's
it's not really
fun,
your personal data. So that's a fun thing. But I think there's so much more nuance than either one of those positions that it's at least worth considering the other side, so that you go like, what are the pros? What are the cons? Because I think that what I like about a debate is that it's at least two people. Like, I'm at least hearing like a back and forth about a single topic, and I feel like we don't get that almost anywhere else now, because if you turn on most cable news, you are not seeing a debate. You are seeing all of one side of something.
Yeah.
Just I hear one guy I listen to on podcast says in violent agreement. It's like they're
it's
everyone's
shouting.
just agreeing with the host or whatever.
Yeah,
and then same thing. I think people are so scared to even at the dinner table or with neighbors ever talk about politics, because everyone's gotten to where I think everyone thinks that we're sorted into these like really small piles, and that like there's no common ground between us. I just don't find that that's true, but I think people are so scared to talk with people about it that a debate scenario like that in school might be the only place that you actually hear two opinions at the same time.
Well, but does it really matter with your neighbor? Like if someone's believes one thing or another?
Some people get very offended by that. I am not. I would be very bored if all of my friends thought exactly like me.
I mean, our friends don't know what we think, and most of the time we don't know what we think.
Well, I mean, I think my friends know what I think. I just think that that is not a precursor to us being able to be friends or not. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. Yeah, no. Well, this is what's weird is people put a label on you. We talked about this.
Of course, yeah.
Like I told my accountant today that I was going to do this talk.
Yeah.
Initially, my wife was in politics. I wasn't allowed to. But I talked to my accountant, and he said, "No, you're conservative." I go, "No, I'm not." He said, "Yes, you are." He's wanting to put his own agenda on me.
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, I'm not."
Well, and that's the problem with a two-party system, is that people are gonna try to sort you into one of the two, and we've got more independents than ever because of that. Although I think independents still generally lean one way or the other. They're just trying to pretend they're not taking sides.
Well, I don't really understand what an independent is. Apparently, you can vote in both parties' primaries. Is that right?
It's a state-to-state thing.
Okay.
So
I know in California, can you vote in both parties?
I know there are 13 states where you cannot vote in. It's not open primaries.
Okay.
In Oklahoma, where we're at, if you're an independent, you can vote in the Democratic primaries, but not the Republican primaries.
Oh, that's interesting.
Some states you can do both. Some states you can do one or the other.
Yeah.
Most states, it's one or the other. You can't vote in both primaries, almost in any state, I don't think. Of course, I hate primaries. I think they should go away. But
back to the international thing.
Yeah.
Like most people think it's a democracy here, where it's a democratic republic.
Right.
And it takes at least half an hour to explain to them America is not a democracy.
Well, and it's not,
and they kind of struggle with that.
Democracy is the foundation of what the country is, but yes, it's a representative republic in the sense that it's not 50% plus one wins every argument.
No, it's not at all. It's not a numbers game. We're in a lot of countries it's sheer numbers.
Yeah,
you all vote for this party, and that's the understanding of democracy.
But it's kind of how we're treating the American government now, is like parliamentary. We're kind of...
It's not.
I know, but that's how voters are kind of treating it. They think that if we elect a Democratic president and we don't elect a Democratic Congress, that the president should get their way.
Yeah, and then this is what happened with the last fiasco, was people thought it's a numbers thing.
Yeah.
And then they came up with numbers, and apparently, I don't know this for a fact, but apparently the numbers added up more than the people who voted,
I mean,
I don't understand how that worked out.
The common refrain in American politics is like, well, they didn't win the popular vote. I'm like, but we don't measure the popular vote.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
you're
like,
not in Australia or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like, it'd be like a football game if you were like, well, yeah, that team technically didn't win, but they had more yards than the other team, so they should win. It was like, well, we don't count yards.
They muddied the water. There's a set of rules.
Yeah.
If you don't like the rules, get everyone together and vote and change the rules. But right now, play within the rules. Like I was talking to someone the other day where the same guy called me conservative, which I'm not. He's a hardcore libertarian.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him, are there any states where you're allowed to, because he talks about states having their own rights.
Right.
What happens if a state allowed someone to go around murdering each other?
This is where things get tricky.
Like at what point are the feds going to get involved? And there must be some common...
But that's happening right now.
Right. Yeah,
I mean, maybe not with murder.
I watched on the way to Burning Man, some people protested, and then the cop drove through the barricade, which was really funny because one lady was chained to the trailer that he crashed into.
Yeah.
And everyone was commenting, that's on tribal land. They can do whatever. So is it different there? Like, I mean, I don't understand.
Oh, no, it's very complicated. So yeah,
I mean, the lady was chained to the trailer. The cop from the tribal police drove straight through the thing, which was funny because she got bashed out the road.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing was 6 people were delaying thousands of people on the way to the Burning Man.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable that a small minority could disrupt a majority of people.
But that feels like a metaphor for everything right now.
It is,
you know what I mean? Because it feels like Twitter is
a meta. Yeah.
Going back to Twitter, Twitter is like not even 1% of the U.S. population that's on there, or whatever. Yeah. It's not represent, and people think it's the real world, or people even think it's like
it's the only world.
It is a tiny. It is like,
but if it's not Twitter, it's Reddit. You know, you get the same people who are like, I'm choosing my fantasy football team based on my Reddit. I mean, like, come on, man. I mean, there's the whole internet. You're gonna just hang out in Reddit.
Twitter has more of an outsized influence, though, on politics and news because that is where the journalists chose to go. Mm-hmm. That's just where they all landed, essentially, was Twitter. Mm-hmm. And so I think it has an outsized, people think it's a bigger deal than it really is, in the sense that, like, that's not really real life. Like, really...
No, real life is what we're doing here.
Right.
This is real life, and people need to do more of it.
And even percentage-wise, like, I think that there are politicians that pay too much attention to Twitter because their staffers are all 20-somethings, and everyone thinks that that's the real world. But they're really, to me, they're alienating the people that are not on Twitter and normal people by, like... I just feel like sometimes we get into these culture war things and these things that don't really matter. And I think Twitter has accelerated that. And that's why, but I want Twitter to be better. And I hope that Elon Musk can get it to a point where it is like
I think he wants it to be like the Chinese app.
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
I don't necessarily trust Elon Musk's authoritarian streak that he has.
Exactly.
I don't really.
He's very friendly with the feds because he has very little opposition.
Yeah, and
in some of his endeavors. So,
right, and I just don't.
You never know with.
I wish it was. I mean, he came in and tried to say that it was going to be like this free speech place. I think that was mostly. I don't know. I want to think that he was being idealistic thinking that you could do that.
I mean, free speech. So, it's limited free speech or it's total free speech.
Well, that's what he wasn't very clear about, and I think that's the problem.
I don't think anyone's very clear about it because free speech is an open mic,
right? And first of all, like, Twitter doesn't have any.
Have that.
Twitter doesn't have any obligation to allow anyone to say anything on their platform. They're not the U.S. government. The U.S. government can't tell people they can't say stuff, but Twitter can do whatever he wants. It's a private.
I think they've.
Company.
I mean, some of those emails seem to have alluded that they did try to tell people what they.
Well, they absolutely did, but my point is that's. Well, that gets tricky.
If it's not them, it's someone else's.
Yeah, that gets tricky. I think there were potentially some First Amendment violations by the government in how they handled telling Twitter and Facebook to take stuff down. But
if it's not them, it's someone else.
Right.
And it's the same principle. You should be able to express yourself.
Right, but my opinion is that I think the United States Constitution and form of government and the Bill of Rights and all that stuff are only worthwhile if we as the citizens of the country decide that we're going to take those things seriously even outside of the law.
Once again, those things seem to be selective.
Right, and that's what it seems like to be. It seems like people like to pick and choose which ones they want to do, but
and then forcing various things as it suits them.
Yeah, so to me with free speech, yes, Twitter doesn't have to do anything. They can restrict it if they want to. I'm using Twitter as just a stand-in for any of them, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. But I would hope that we'd have more of a culture of allowing people to say what they want to and free speech, because if we think it's valuable for us as a country, why can't that apply to our platform too? And I know there's some limitations there.
But if you think you can censor what I should hear, that means you think you're smarter than I am.
I agree.
And that's the problem. Like, if you've got a whole lot of stupid people and you have to shelter them from hearing some nasty words.
Right.
Like, what's that telling you about how you see your people?
Right. And I think that the other problem I don't think they give people enough credit, which, to be fair, maybe they don't deserve the credit. I don't think we've done a great job.
I don't think some people, I think it comes down to education. Again.
Right, but to me, that's why, to me, the best form of that is to give people the information and let them decide what to do with it. Right. Sometimes that's going to be... Because I mean...
Like, what are people going to do with bad information?
Well, and like my point is that like Twitter's no one on Twitter's ever been worried. No news organization or journalist has ever been worried about publishing the false information if they got there first. Is that like the double standard to me is that like if it's a news event, and they're rushing to get out there so they can be the first person, so they can get a bunch of retweets, so they can be popular, so they can sell something, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they don't seem to mind if they err on the side of like getting there first and not worrying about the facts. But then if some sort of big thing, like, I mean, let's just go back to just because it's fresh and it was all happening in 2020, whether it was the COVID stuff that was very much clearly, I think generally the right, not entirely, but the part of the right that was like, hey, masks aren't effective. They got all the social media shut that kind of stuff down.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah.
Or the coronavirus probably originated in a lab. Or not that it was created, but
maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But
right. But the point is they were shutting down one side of all of those arguments and saying that it was not true. And now most of that stuff has ended up proving to actually have been true. Yeah. It wasn't. So they were like saying they were labeling it as disinformation. And I just don't think that.
Well, I think some people made a lot of money. I mean.
Oh, I think you're right.
I mean, I grew up with the Y2K, you probably did too.
Oh yeah.
Whereas Bill Gates, I thought he was the shyster back then.
Yeah.
For telling everyone, because we all changed the bias. The bias is all, nothing happened.
Yeah.
In the meantime, their notion was you had to replace your computer.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so he went down in my own personal history as being the shyster. And then
you can make a lot of money selling panic.
So here he was telling us all about. I'm like, you're the computer shyster, and you're telling me about viruses. I mean, I'm confused.
I think the problem is that people, they're sorting. So they're sorting one way or another. So they're saying like, okay, well, I like Trump, and so anything he says I'm going to agree with, or I don't like Trump, so anything he says I'm going to disagree with. I think that's one problem that people have.
I thought Trump was funny, and it was really funny. Some of these things he did, I'm sure a lot of people didn't find him funny.
I don't think he handled any of it very well.
No, I mean, I think that's what made it funny.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was a disaster. But
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
I think that, I think Elon Musk's challenge with Twitter specifically is that he said he wanted to be for free speech, but he'll even shut down stuff that's like bad for him personally, which I think is a bad look. I think trying to get
talking about the tracking his tail.
Yeah, either that or just some of that kind of stuff where it's like, hey, like technically anyone can do this,
right?
And it's kind of one of those things where I think he could have handled that better to be like.
Yeah,
I think it would have made him look more like the good guy if he just would have been like, yeah, that's public information. And I think it would have been even funnier if he just would have tweeted where he was going every time before that guy got the chance. Exactly, my point is make it irrelevant.
That would be funny. Yeah.
And I just don't think he's understood.
So meet me here. We're inbound. Yeah,
because the difference is between,
they need to make politics a lot more funny than
right. And so I think that he's turned into one of those divisive figures where people are like, have made up their mind and they'll go one way or another. And I'm with you. I think that it's better to be like, okay, someone said something. I'm going to test that against the things I know or the things I can research and find out.
And you can find out
and make an opinion out of it. And sometimes I'm going to agree and sometimes I'm not.
Or you can leave, if you hear something, you can leave it unresolved in your mind.
Yeah.
So, for example, he's suing some people.
Yeah.
The anti-defamation crowd.
You don't have to know then.
I don't have to know. It's something I'm interested in. If I hear more about, if I see them come up as more things, I'll push on it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, who cares,
I think it's also okay to defer to people that know better. So, for example, in a lawsuit situation,
right, yeah.
I want to listen to what a lawyer has to say about it.
I would say with the lawsuit situation is do your best to not get into a lawsuit situation.
Well, yeah, personally, obviously, you don't want to be in one. But I'm just saying,
even with the companies, do the best you can.
Yeah, and then I just think that,
you don't have to do this. I mean, one of the cool things about overseas is if you decide to sue someone and you lose, you eat all the costs.
Which we've got some of that here in certain states.
A lot of people from being idiots. But I still hear of a lot of idiots.
I wish we had more of that here.
Yeah.
We do have some of that
Yeah.
in some places. I think this is actually one of the states where if you sue someone and you lose, you have to pay their legal fees.
Okay. So
and that deters people a little bit. Not all the way.
Yeah, because
but
you hear these things when you crash a commercial vehicle. The guy thinks he's won the lottery.
oh, yeah, for sure.
You know, and I'm like, that's got to stop. You know,
Well, I think it depends on the situation. I think if there's negligence...
there is, but
Yeah.
that should definitely not happen. I mean,
Yeah.
companies should train their drivers.
Yeah.
Dissuade using crystal meth when you're driving a semi.
Dissuade. I like the gentle language there.
And
Shouldn't do meth while you drive a truck.
Please don't use meth while you drive. You know.
Yeah.
Give the guy a reasonable work week.
Yeah.
Stay days in. Stay in whatever hotel you want to with your rig. Just drive safely on the road, please. You know.
Yeah. But if...
Public safety announcement. Drive safely.
Yeah, but don't you think that we could do better? I think that's I think that goes back to your point about like I think people aren't looking for the information enough.
They're not even trying.
And in that kind of situation, like maybe a company does do something wrong, and so they should be held accountable for it. Like I'm fine with that if they did something negligent or.
Why are they doing something wrong?
Well, normally it's because
like dumping toxins into someone's water supply. That's stupid.
That would be wrong.
That's not even wrong. It's stupid.
It's stupid
That's
and wrong.
Yeah.
It's your water too, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that does it. I think we've been talking for like an hour, so I think that'll probably do it. We've been all over the place on this one, but thanks for talking to me.
Thanks. Yeah. So definitely no political bias from me at all.
Yeah. But it's interesting to hear your opinions as an outsider.
I really respect people.
Yeah.
Like I mean, we were talking in the context of work, and I was complaining about architecture being appalling in some contexts. And I said it's akin to Soviet-era utilitarian architecture. It's absolutely horrific. And one of the guys there couldn't help himself, and he said, "I love it. I'm a communist." And he quickly was embarrassed because we were in a work context.
Right.
I was like, "Man, just own it.
I think
if you're
it's
a communist, be it. Just
Yeah.
that's cool." The same guy happened to like eating expensive French food.
Yeah.
And like French laundry type stuff, and I'm like,
They
and if
don't
we were
have that in
communist,
most communist countries.
you absolutely would not be getting that there. So he's a bit of a. I was confused.
I find that most people that are that claim to be communist that live in America are like that.
He enjoyed living a very affluent lifestyle.
But I'm happy to argue and talk to any communist in a friendly discussion over a drink.
Yeah, I just wish that he wouldn't. I wish he'd just wear his colors, you know, and the people could tell him, "Look, you're going to be eating, I don't know, some boiled fish." And
you're not eating.
A friend of mine
fancy food.
who immigrated here was from, I think he's from Ukraine, but he moved here many years ago when it was a heavy communist situation there. And he's like me. He's so grateful for the opportunity to come here.
Yeah, I've not met anyone that is from a former or fled a communist country who has high things to say about it.
No, he didn't. But,
you know what I mean?
But he's very grateful of the cool things here. Like when we does work travel, he wants to eat at a nice restaurant.
I think that's what we're missing.
And I just wish we could share this experience. Like, this is cool here.
I think the gratitude thing is what you hit on that's missing.
I think so. Even like being able to pull up to a drive-through, people probably snub that overseas because it's like use too much carbon or something. But it's delightful to drive your car through on a hot day and get
it is
2 hands full of ice cream.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And you have happy kids, happy everybody.
I think that's. I think the gratitude thing you touched on is kind of the right thing. I think that all of these problems don't go away. But at least if we're a little thankful for the situations of like, okay, this is bad, but let's think about all the good stuff. You know, the fact that like, whatever, COVID, you mentioned, it's like, you know, there were some benefits to it, even though it wasn't ideal.
I know some people who died. I mean, I worked with someone who's 81 and never saw the guy again.
Yeah.
You know, and I think people also need to appreciate the humor in this. Like that lady who said Congress is like a care home.
Well, yeah, it's like a nursing home.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
I wish people, and I'm sure Democrat people said equally funny things that we should laugh about too.
Right. I think, but that's the only reason that people thought it was funny because it wasn't directed at a single side.
No, I think it was a lot of them were.
You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of them. You know. Well, we'll see if by the next time you come on, Congress is fixed and everything's working well, but it probably won't be. Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens. Yeah.
All right.
And let's hit Black Friday.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Doug.
Thanks for having me. It's been really cool.
All right. See ya.
Okay.